So here are 10 tips for new or maybe not so new Wing users. We're gonna go over some steps, quick tips, or even some technical explanation and spicy topics to make you feel comfortable, confident, and efficient when mixing on Wing. Tip number: setting the clock master and sample rate. Whenever you're working with digital devices, you have to set up the sample rate and decide who's going to be the sync source or the clock master. It's the same term. But why exactly? What is a clock master? So imagine we're working at 48 kilohertz here. You can also check 44.1, which is the CD standard. But 48 kilohertz means that the console and the whole digital system is going to take 48,000 pictures of the sound wave each second. And those pictures are going to be sent from an S16, for example, to the Wing. But the clock master is going to make sure that no picture is lost. Picture someone throwing the ball at someone else and the other one catching the ball. They have to be perfectly in sync so that the ball doesn't fall to the ground. That's the clock master. So when it comes to the sample rate, we have 48 and 44.1.
But hey, Arnold, isn't this a really old standard, only using 48 kilohertz? How about 96 kilohertz, man?
Why not 96? Guys, we've talked about it, but the science is in. There is no actual difference, nothing that you can perceive, and definitely not in a live gig. Guys, Gary doesn't want me to talk about 96K, but I mean, we could do a video if you want to. Let us know. Here is tip number: input routing. So on the X32, you had to route batches of 8 inputs to 8 channels. On Wing, if you go to routing, sources, you can see all the possible sources that you can assign to channels. Local inputs, AES, external modules, internal modules, etc. I've connected an S16 via AES50 to the console. Let's assign those inputs to channels on the Wing. Let's go to routing, and the quickest way to do it is with the channels page selected. Now we unlock that and select the AES50A port, which is the one I've connected the S16 to, and then we can just assign the channels we want to. Also, let's say channel 7 and 8 are stereo. I can link those and send them to a single channel on the Wing. You don't need to use 2 channels for a single stereo source. You can just route them to a single channel. And just like that, we've routed 16 inputs to the first 14 channels on the Wing. But let's say we also want to route the local inputs, the local preamps, and I'm gonna make these 7 and 8 also stereo, and also 9 and 10 local are gonna be stereo, and so on. And just by doing that, you have successfully connected 40 inputs to the Wing. Here's another tip. Every channel has both a main input and an alternate input, and you can very quickly switch from one to the other as a backup microphone or for virtual sound checks. Let's say channel 1 is going to be used for the lead vocal, and the main microphone is coming from the AES51 port. The alternate input can be, let's say, the local input 24, and just by that I can quickly switch from one input to the other. If you want to do that more quickly, you can go to the routing page, channels, and then toggle between the main and the alt inputs and assign the desired channels to the channels on the console. Right now, the Wing is the clock master in the system with the S16 connected to it. Let's see what happens if I change to the AES50. Now, Wing is expecting to receive the sync signal from the S16, but it's not set up to send it. So I'm going to change the S16 to clock master mode. Now it's on clock master mode at 48 kilohertz, and it's receiving the sync source appropriately. What happens if I change back to internal? Now we have 2 units trying to be a clock master, the Wing and the S16. And we can see the red blinking light saying something's wrong. If I change back the S16 to a mode where it will receive the sync source from the Wing, we can see the green light back on. Tip number: output routing. First, we're going to assign a speaker output, a headphone output, and then the main 1 and main 2 outputs. We're going to get into the speaker and headphones in a bit. So let's go to our output groups. We're going to use the 8 local outputs, but you could also send signals to all these output groups. So channels 1 and 2 on our local outputs are going to be our main one, left and right. That's going to be used for the PA, for example. Then the USB audio out 1 and 2 are going to be our main 2, left and right. Let's say for streaming, for example. And then we're going to use our local outputs 3 and 4 for our monitor speaker outputs. And we're going to use outputs 7 and 8 for our headphone outputs. And that's going to be routed to these 2 headphone outputs here. Tip number, let's set up the monitoring. If you click on this view button, that will take you to the monitors section. Otherwise, you can also click on setup, monitors. And there you can select which signal is being sent to your speaker and headphone outputs without having to patch different outputs. So you can choose between all the 4 mains, buses, matrices, and aux ins. And you also have a lot of cool tools like limiter, EQ with a lot of bands, dim, delay, phase inversion, and you can also set up the talkback mode. The cool thing is that on the Wing Black or the Wing Compact you have dedicated hardware knobs for the headphones and speaker outputs, also the talkback. If you're on a Wing Rack, you can set it up as custom controls. We're going to get to it in a bit. So let's set up the talkback. I've connected this mic to local input 17 because reasons. You have to go to setup and then define which channel you're going to use for your talkback. That can be either channel 40 or aux 8. I'm going to use channel 40. And that's going to change this channel to talkback. So channel 40 is being used for talkback. So we have to assign a source to channel 40. We just go to our input and select channel 17, which is the one I'm using for the local input, and we can raise the gain, and now there is our talkback. So now if I go to the monitoring section, I can set up to which channel, to which buses, matrices, or mains the talkback is going to be sent, and there are 2 different groups which you can set up. Those are going to be active when you push the respective buttons. Tip number, solo modes. If you go to setup, audio, solo system, you can see there are 3 different solo modes. The difference is in SIP or solo in place, when you solo something, everything else is going to be muted. So you might want to use that if you're in the studio, but if you're in front of a live audience and you click that button, you press that button, the audience is only going to hear that. So make sure you don't use that mode if you're doing a live show. Then you have the live and the studio modes. The difference is, with live and studio modes, when you solo something, that signal is sent to a solo bus, and that solo bus is sent to the speakers and headphone outputs that you define on your monitors section. All mains and all other outputs that you have routed remain untouched. So if I press this button, the audience will still listen to the main mix. If you're on live mode, you can select a different solo bus, either the speaker or the headphone, for each independent channel. If you're on studio mode, there is only one option for all channels, either the speaker or the headphone, and that is selected here. Phones, speakers, or both phones and speakers. Tip number, remote control. So if you want to connect your computer to the console, you just have to get yourself either a switch or a network in your venue, and then make sure that both the computer and the console are connected via Ethernet to that network. If you want to use your phone or tablet with the apps to control the console, you have to connect the console to a router and make sure that the phone and the tablet also have access wirelessly to the same network. By the way, my colleague John did a great video on that topic, so make sure to check it out if you need more setup information. Tip number, so after you've set up all your routing, custom controls, talkback and whatnot, you have to save that. So make sure to go to the library, save, and then you can save all your settings in a single snapshot. And when you recall that, you can do the partial update and select which parameters are going to be loaded back on the console. There's actually a video, or there will be, I don't know when this video is going to come out, but there's a video about the whole library section. We had some fun doing it, so check it out. Tip number, custom controls. So depending on the model you will have a different set of knobs and buttons. Make sure you're on the custom controls button and then hold down the view button. Now you have access to all the knobs and buttons you can assign parameters to. So let's say I want to assign the panning of, I don't know, channel 21 to this knob. Now I can control that with here. Or I can click on this button and assign the, let's say, the channel page for the snare top. Now when I click on it, that'll take me directly to that page. We can also assign a tap tempo to custom controls. Let's go to view. We're going to use this button and then we find the effect parameter. We scroll down to delay time and now we have a tap tempo here. When we tap it, now we have a tap tempo here. If we go back to the effect and we tap here, that's going to affect our time parameter. Tip number, shortcuts. So if you are on this screen and you click on the top left corner, that's going to take you to the channel selection screen and you can jump around really quickly. Here's another thing. I've assigned the other channel previews and channel next buttons to these custom controls, and now I can jump around with these buttons. And if I hold down that button and turn the knob above it, I can scroll through the channels. Also, if you have assigned a parameter to a button, you can also hold it down and turn the knob above that to modify the parameter assigned to it. I hope these 10 tips are helpful. If you like this kind of video or have suggestions yourself of what we should cover, let us know and we'll put it together.